write open source code and I use it all over the place. That's probably on the research side, research and service. And let's see, I've published in open access journals. I've worked on developing open standards. Probably goes into formats, and that's. I guess that's probably one research session.
Are you referring to open access in the sense that publishers are not in the flow at all?
No, I mean these are journals that are open access.
They don't charge subscriptions.
Yeah, they don't charge
subscriptions. So there's a
in
great.
other words, their authors pay.
Not all of them.
Not all.
No, these aren't.
They could be like First Monday, which the author doesn't pay,
okay.
nor
Right.
is there a subscription charge.
Okay.
For example.
D-Lib magazine.
D-Lib's another example, yeah.
Yeah.
D-Lib, First Monday,
Yeah.
there are a number that just do that.
Yeah.
And they're, they have a peer review and such, and they have invited just like everybody else. Not all of PLOS does that because the reviewers are expensive, frankly. Yes.
I'm Erin White. I work in the SILS lab downstairs. I'm a master's student. I think I put myself in the same boat as Cristóbal under culture and access. Lately, it's become, for me, it's all about helping people.
You want a research culture, or do you want a practice culture?
I don't know. I guess practice. It's become more about helping people figure out what's going on in their lives and what kind of technologies they can use to make their lives easier, and hopefully using open source software to do that.
But not writing it necessarily.
Maybe in the future, who can say? Yeah. Do some kind of code.
That's good. Okay, Gunnar. Yes.
I'm Scott Adams, I'm acting director here, and I find myself all over the map. I'm an enabler, and I'm not strictly stuck with open source person. I find the issues that Don has raised about access and the financial matters involved with that very interesting. I find Jeff's experiences with trying to move very interesting. Moving from open office to open office from Word. So I see myself, my role as an enabler. So we do a lot of this stuff. We run Red Hat Linux Enterprise. I was instrumental in helping try to get that here on campus, along with iBiblio when John was here. So I see lots of different roles for myself and how we use open access, open formats. But I'm interested in real life issues of money when it comes to either journals or open access. So that's all I have to say. So culturally, actually, I find myself just sitting in the cultural, and then the rest are just tools, areas of research, academics.
That's right.
Bring it to your.
Yeah, where you
I can grab a chair.
We'll show you what's going on and you can participate. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. We have one, I believe it's right there, and Cristóbal's going to get you one. Okay.
I'm Michael Nutt. I am the media technician for the Communication Studies Department. I work mostly with the undergraduate media production program. So I'm kind of in the practice end of things. I'm a staff member. Right now our program has almost nothing to do with open source anything, and there are some challenges to that. A lot of it having to do with the kind of skill sets that our students want to get out of our program, which is going to include proprietary software programs like Photoshop or Final Cut Pro, employee to see that on the resume. So in a lot of these ways, it'd be kind of hard for us to transition to that without kind of a greater acceptance of it. But one thing that we can do, or what I'm kind of interested in right now, is the content side of things. What happens with these media artifacts once they get produced? And this is kind of going to come into more prominence now that iTunes U has launched, and the students are going to be putting their digital products online and accessible to everybody. And right now, I don't think there's really a culture of understanding about what kind of happens with their stuff once it's online. And we're also interested in trying to get it archived at Wilson. And I'd be interested in trying to push our students towards more a better understanding of the Creative Commons license and how that can work for them and how that's important to their work. So content, Creative Commons kind of stuff is probably the area that we could most make headway in.
There's a pretty good article out at the Center for Social Media at American University about what constitutes fair use,
Yeah.
and it's been remixed, just like his last week, I think it came out. And Peter Yazzie is one of the law brains behind that, so it's pretty good. They actually have a very liberal interpretation.
I was just going to toss out that even if you're using Final Cut Pro, say for example, there's a lot of stuff on the access formats and like you're saying, the licensing that you can really hit on. I mean, just recently I had video of a Trilug meeting that I wanted to make available, and it was on DV tapes, and the only kind of workflow that I could use reasonably was Final Cut down in the MRC. But I mean, still, I had to think about what is my target format. Am I going to make it available in multiple formats? You know, Google Video turned out to be the easiest way to make it accessible to the most people. So,
which of course requires a proprietary plugin to access.
Exactly. So, I mean, there are tons of things.
Is trying to perpetuate that culture through our faculty members. We don't have a really good system for discussing that on a program-wide level. So how do you get faculty to, that maybe aren't SILS, aren't kind of aware of these problems? How do you get faculty members in other humanities programs to realize the importance of that on, like a department-wide basis, and then perpetuate that through the classroom?
I'm Derek Rodriguez. By day I work at TRLN, running the UNC project, and the rest of the time I'm in the NACO program here. In my day-to-day work, actually the UNC project consists almost entirely of open source, except for the UNC application itself.
A fairly large component of that project.
Right, but Red Hat Linux, Apache, the whole 9 yards. So the point there, though, is sort of teaching interest, which is in a couple areas. One is teaching a class in the spring on managing information technologies in libraries, and it's increasingly important for any librarian to understand how all these pieces and parts work together. We're contemplating putting up an instance of Koha or another iOS, open source iOS for our students to use in my class, and then also in cataloging classes and things like that. So it's important for library students to understand about all these technologies, some of which are open source, some of which are not. But increasingly more applications are open source, as Kevin noted. If you're doing anything in library automation anymore, it's open source. So there's a teaching component there. Looking at another area I'm interested in is academic libraries, of course, and open access content is that's critical. So if we think about the academic library seminar, either one. Either teaching or research. The academic library seminar, that's something we have to treat more often than we did in the past. And I can't speak for the folks who teach collection development, but I would imagine that that's something that's addressed there as well.
I'm David Ramito in the Biology and Chemistry Library. Been involved in supporting some submissions for the NIH open access requirement. I'm interested in generally in open access literature, especially in the sciences.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are.
You're in.
That's good.
Okay, say it again.
I'm here for curiosity, but I think mostly I'm thinking about the issues. I work with school librarians, preparing people to become school library media specialists, and actually I'm sitting here getting kind of sick on my stomach as I listen to you. Because if we move to, it's much easier for school librarians who wear all of these hats to deal with the materials that they have, you know, the proprietary databases, because the people are proprietary resources, because they're there to give them the support. You know, they're easy to learn. They're there to give them the support. They don't have to do the technology themselves. And so as I'm sitting here thinking, I believe in all of this, but I'm thinking about how does it all fit into for a school librarian who I see their primary role as teaching, and not, you know, they do all these other jobs, but they need easy tools to allow them to do all these jobs. We had a school librarian in Philadelphia who did an article for our issue of Knowledge Quest, which is a journal for school librarians who've done all open source software in his school. It's a magnet school in Philadelphia, and you know the issues that were involved were, you know, the technology, the understanding of systems and all that stuff. So anyway, that's just kind of what I'm saying. Where does it all fit in? How do they do it?
I don't think this is unique to school library.
No.
No, I know it's not. I just
really
think, but I'm.
don't.
Every place has a choice
I
of
think-
bar
I think
bill.
Right.
I mean,
Open access
but
is
it's a slight in between, so. But
Just,
I think,
I'm sitting here thinking, how do you prepare them to do all
Yeah.
that
But-
piece, plus all the other stuff they have to know?
You know, and the other thing that I would toss in there is that I don't think that problem of support and, you know, wanting to go to somebody and just have something ready out of the box is unique to open source software, though. I mean, there's plenty of proprietary software out there that people pick or don't pick based on
Right,
the
absolutely.
support
Oh,
of the
yeah.
support community.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I think, I mean, this is precisely why the most successful open source projects are things like, precisely like WordPress, which offers a WordPress.com, where you can go and, you know, click, and you have a blog.
Yeah, you have different levels.
So
I think that's certainly true. Firefox is probably the most used, widely used individual open source project.
right, so then
It doesn't.
angel benefactor
It's
Google.
no harder to download and exploit it.
Yes.
Yes.
Javed Mustafa, Associate Professor here at SILS, wearing another hat as a research fellow in the Biomedical Research Institute and Imaging Center in medical school. My interest in open source comes from mainly pedagogical interest in terms of using open source distribution, the way open sources repositories work as a laboratory for teaching next generation librarians in terms of the utility of software in their day-to-day tasks, and how you, looking at software essentially the way we're looking at digital data and digital repositories as the next challenge, as far as how do we manage software, how do we provide collection development of software, how do we provide services around software that are relevant to information services. So I'm looking at open source repositories as a model for that.
Can I have another turn?
Matt?
Because listening to everybody, I guess I'm deeper in it than I thought. I didn't realize that research in Python,
Many
using
of us think
Python and NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit,
Oh, yeah.
and even using Firefox even counted. Wow.
So where would you put yourself, Karen?
I think I still belong under the question mark.
Well, we always thought that, but.
Well, clearly,
You're-
some of my major research tools are open source. So if I'm that clueless, think how clueless others may be. There may be a whole community that don't even know they are part of the community.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what Benedict Anderson said, imagine. No.
How do you think that open source is going to affect the future of information science, certainly from the metadata kinds of issues, but also in terms of the contribution that librarians can make to identify
I would not say that question's been decided one way or the other around here, actually.
Maybe not, but we still do it. So, most people come and take classes and do learn information tools. So, and it's certainly it's almost out of the window in journalism. Frankly, journalists have to do multimedia or they don't have jobs. So, that doesn't have to do with open source, but that just has to do with engaging technology. The next question is, can you take that technology and make it work for you? And so this is what's salient to me, is can these core values be used in part in different ways, not exclusively necessarily. So, because some people are against that. Or it's probably more unreal to ignore participatory culture, which goes from code through content to access issues and policy, which we didn't put down as a really important part. That strikes me as probably the most important. So it's unreal to ignore those as important forces. To think it's also just as unreal to think they're an exclusive force. So from my viewpoint, the code has an underlying force, and that's really what Chris Kelty's talking about in his book, which is an anthropology book about the cultural significance of open source software, how it lets people think that at least some of them can control parts of their lives. And we see that already. People like change the way Firefox looks, or change the template on their blog, or participated in a wiki, those kind of things that actually have low technical barriers. And those can be done at all kinds of levels without actually touching the code. So, and there are also varieties of openness, which is under great discussion. So, they're the absolutist, basically free software people who demand a certain amount of things. And there are other people who are happy with the Google Maps API. Everybody in journalism can do a report, you do an article and map it and do visualization by mapping now, and they do. And the guys are a little better, change the icons from the Google icons, like you're doing the fires in San Francisco, they replace the little dogs with little flames or something. But those level of access to be able to participate, have participatory culture, to have access to the tools of participation, to have access to policies of participation, and they don't come at no cost. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks that. So really, when I hear about, for example, your work, it's good to figure out, to understand what costs are. When Jane and Greg and Jane and Bert and I were doing our work, it's like, how do people who are in these cultures behave? Because this is a big question for economists. Why would people produce free software? And the business schools constantly ask this. And so I put a couple of how-to books that also ask that question on the readings. Dan Woods, in particular, does managing open source software, just real practical advice on how to manage a project, because those are kind of things that we actually in our school kind of teach people how to do. How you help organize and create access to information and create people working together to solve problems. So it's not the only one, but you can take that out from regular project management too.
I just wanted to toss out for Martin Lipman, who's a graduate student in SILS but couldn't be here. He wanted to bring up the fact that NC State had an experimental FOSS class in which graduate students were required to write code for and actively contribute to a free software project as part of the class. And just kind of wonder, and so there's an article on that, which I presume we can get a link out to people afterward. But to just kind of toss that out there as, NC State is going down one track of how they think they want to integrate FOSS into their curriculum. What would our TAC at
our contribution
SILS?
might be at other levels. Yeah. I mean, it can just be studying that participation, how participatory communities work. There are already Henry Jenkins at MIT does this with his sort of convergence culture work. And at NYU, there's some work going on there too, trying to understand what happens when people are less consumers and more participators are, and also can do what we saw talking to people who are doing health services in Kenya, Uganda, and Chad, is those guys are, each place has such, that their overall problems are very common, but they're specific on the ground problems are very, very specific. And unless they have access to tools to change how that works there, they can't, if the software fails. Even if it's, all software has no cost, like they don't pay for the proprietary stuff because they take it. What are you gonna do, arrest them?
Do you have any notion at all as to the people who access our biblio, as to whether they're individuals or whether they're librarians?
I have no idea. And I don't think there's any way, I don't think they even know they're accessing a biblio in many cases, because what you know, and the Washington Post and the New York Times and other places found this too, people find you by, Google is how people find stuff. It's like, I think it's greater than 80% all websites are found by Google. So,
that's not quite true with journal articles. Most of the journal articles are identified through searching from ANI services, not Google.
Well,
by faculty.
Depends on the discipline, I bet.
it depends on the, yes, highly disciplined. And
Because
also,
computer
one of
science,
the,
it might be Google Scholar. at
yeah,
this
Google
point,
Scholar is
that'd
the
be
biggest hit
only
for
discipline.
them,
Yeah.
easily.
But that's probably the only discipline, right? Google Scholar.
Yeah, but what you're asking, you were asking about our biblio, not.
Yeah, no, it's a different issue.
That's a different answer.
Yeah,
But
different
what,
issue.
and I gave back to you, Washington, other things that are perceived and branded strongly, there's still over 80% access by Google search. Most sites are
You need it all.
Oh, yeah. Huh? You want you to say the Harvard? Yeah, this is the, Don says, Terrell has pointed out the Harvard adopts open source requirement. That's about their publications for faculty. And that's actually a requirement. MIT's made a voluntary one, which you get brownie points for making your work more widely available, and then they have a teaching access thing in which you also get additional brownie points for making your.
Can you tell us what the policy is here at UNC? Because my understanding was that UNC had an open source policy as an institution, a larger institution.
The faculty council back in 2005, I could find the proposition if I look for a few minutes, but faculty council adopted a resolution in 2005 that faculty are, let me see if I can get the phrasing just right, encouraged to, well, that we are the owners of our intellectual property and published work and are encouraged, I believe is the word that's used, to publish in open access venues.
And actually, there
Well, I
is
was
a
thinking more
premise.
about the creation of tools. I thought that on the IT side there was an open source
Oh,
policy,
that I
like
don't know
we
about.
have to have a good reason not to use an open source tool or not to adopt an open source thing. Is that not the case?
I've never heard that. But I will say that on the journal thing, the provost has funds set aside so that if you want to publish in open access, it's paid, you can apply for the provost money.
And they're pretty generous small grants.
When you say open access, do you mean author pays, or do you mean the free web, or do you mean the kind where you strictly put it into your author website or?
Okay, so those are three good questions.
Yeah.
The only one that requires money, which is the only one I'm addressing,
Yeah.
is the.
Well, they all require money.
Well, okay,
yeah.
so let me come back.
Right,
to
the
this.
question is where the money comes from.
Where does the money come from? So
You
this,
bet, because the flow of transfer of funds.
Yeah.
The Vice Chancellor for Research and Economic Development offers small grants of up to $5,000 for author fees.
Yeah.
Right.
The Faculty Council's resolution doesn't specify and covers all of the above, presumably.
Right. And some schools, actually, I think some computer science departments, I don't know whether ours still does, but because NSF wanted this,
Yeah.
their papers all have to be available on their department server minimum. and then NIH wants to
Yeah.
their place.
The-
Their own place.
The notion, though, of authors providing access to their articles independent of the publishers is not new.
Right. That's
Reprints
okay.
is an example of that.
Oh, yeah.
Reprints have been a big issue, a big part of publishing for years and years
Right.
and years. So you get 500 or 200 copies yard,
Mhm.
distribute it around. Nobody looks at it, but you distribute it around, and that's, so it's not a new concept.
No, that's
Sure,
okay.
but
It's
we're still not
okay.
doing anything with
It's
that.
okay to do it. I mean,
Yeah,
I would say that those are all fine, but one of the things that we do know, one study that's been out, is that if you put an article in Google Scholar, there's some, what's the probability? It's 9 times more likely that it'll be cited.
There's some questions about that.
Yeah, but okay, I'll wait your response to that article. So, because it's,
There
that's
are
the
several
other thing.
articles that come to that conclusion, actually.
Yeah, it's
and I
not,
can back
it's
up.
not a sub
Yeah.
decision.
But that's only one of the issues here.
So
is,
that's
I mean,
one.
Open access is
But that's
only
what's a
one of
good
the
area for study. I
Oh,
mean, so
yeah.
what we're talking about here is
Yeah.
an opportunity to study and validate or invalidate. I mean, you know, because,
Yeah.
you know, that's how does science move forward, you know, by negation.
Can I interject before we have to lose too many more
Oh, yeah, we're
people?
1 o'clock.
What is the goal here for this meeting? Do we want to suggest that we launch some kind of coordinated research agenda within SILS? How to integrate this into the curriculum? I mean, what do we want to come away from this?
Okay, so
having decided?
I saw this as an inventory meeting.
Okay,
In
fair
which
enough.
we self-identified, we said, we tried to figure out what areas we're covering, if any, because frankly, I didn't know. I had like this feeling because different people we were talking about it over the year, and different people had said, you know, I wanna do this, and I want open source to be a part of it, or I wanna teach this in my class, or I wanna use open source software, or we need to pick back up the research we were doing, or, and comes up in open video, and it comes up in, you know, the archives projects and stuff like that. So I went, well, if we have all this out there, and if it looks like, you know, open source for library list is very big, and the cultural parts seem significant, and the open access publishing thing is one of the, you know, we've had 3 different groups on our campus prepare reports about that, and the most positive thing that's come out of it is this funding for author fees. That if we wanted to actually have some sort of coherent and cohesive direction, then we need to inventory where we are, find out what our interests are, and then make proposals based on that. So I see this as the lit review portion of our show.
I think the plan was to have
Not the research question.
follow-up session like this on one of the Friday noon slots in the fall with more people around.
Right, right. And the idea then is that if we've identified some stuff and we can talk about it, we can understand what some categories are, and we can refer each other to readings and whatever we need, then we can move it to what we'll do next.
So what do we do with this then? Do we take this and figure out what cuts across this and who's united in
Or what
certain
the
areas
strengths
and
are.
what
Somebody
the-
take a picture.
Or several.
Yeah.
Does somebody have a digital
Oh, yeah.
camera? Is somebody taking?
I do.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that.
Take a picture.
We'll take a picture, and what we'll do
That's
is,
what we
and
did at our
Don,
meetings.
and Don, sounds more about this.
Slip by your head.
Has, been taking a lot of notes, so we'll make this available probably, on a wiki, of course, and that would make Brad proud. Huh? And, Brad's done a lot of work with open access and with using, wikis in class and so forth, so that's, even though he's not here.
I
Yeah.
look forward to getting more.
Thank you.
Okay, so now with Jane Breeding, so how many people, if we have a follow-up session with Don presenting some of his work, should it be next week or should it be July 30th? Those are our 2 choices. How many people will be coming if it's next week?
I can come next week.
How many people will be coming if it's July 30th?
Not me.
Okay, so we can meet this week.
I narrowed that down. I won't be here, but
You won't be here next week?
No, I'll be in San Francisco.
I won't be here next week either, and I'd love to come
Well,
to
then
that.
let's hold
I
off until
won't
the fall.
either.
Okay.
We'll do it early fall. We'll do it early
And he
fall.
could write up a little blurb.
Thanks for, what's that?
Well,
I have to go, but could you just send me
Thanks for
something to
waiting.
read about local culture?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've read some things on the other end of it.
I have them
There's
not
a-
About
laying
how
away.
it's really not a good thing, so I need to read some positive.
Oh,
No, I would like
You
to.
mean co-participatory culture is not a good thing?
How could it not be? I thought teaching was.
Oh, I agree, yeah, but I'm just curious. I mean, if you had sent me some stuff, I'm curious to see if you guys are replying.
Sure, I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there that tests policy and other things. Well, do you know,
And I wanna keep your two so that's
Hacker King, there's a comic book out of Brazil that's for kids to teach them how to be ethical hackers, for example. And it's in Portuguese and English. I mean, they're two different versions.
Yeah.
And they also have like a website which kids
So, have you seen my flip?
That's nice.
I love this thing. I can,
It's really cute.
just like
I like that you got the pink also.
Indeed. Indeed. All right, I'm gonna turn this off.
Okay, good.